Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to The Marriage Conversation with your sister, Na'ima B. Robert. If it's your first time joining us, then welcome. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and comment and let us know which points of this conversation are speaking to you, whether it is a yes or a excuse me. Your reaction I want to know in the comments. So please do feel below. Without further ado, I want to welcome my guest today. And my guest today is Khadijah al-Kaddour. And I'm going to give her, I always say her name like that, even in my own head. So I'm going to give her an opportunity, inshallah, the work that she does. And then we are going to dive into the topic today of step parents, stepdads, stepmoms, blended families. Should women who've been divorced expect less? Should they lower their standards? Should they raise them? We're going to talk about it all today. Sister Khadijah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Na'ima. It's so lovely to be here. I actually didn't know what the topic was until I came on, so alhamdulillah. Kind of had a guess, but alhamdulillah. So I am a degree qualified parenting coach. I've been doing programs with mothers since 2014, and I have been coaching for the last 5 years, mothers, helping them to reclaim themselves, to build their self-worthiness, have thriving relationships in their home. And a biggest aspect is I really want to see thriving Muslim homes, and our homes make up the ummah. So that is basically the crux of what I do. And that is such an important aspect of that conscious parenting and rediscovering yourself and knowing yourself so that you can actually be thriving in those relationships.
100%. The Secrets of Successful Wives conference, you'll recognize Sister Khadijah from the fantastic session we had on the whole step parenting, blended families, etc. It really was, mashallah, a really honest, open conversation. And I think it was very much appreciated by the audience. Now, I did a video a little while back talking about serving high, I think, expectations that are too high for men who are coming in as a stepfather. And some people understood where I was coming from, or got it, or agreed, and other people did not agree with what I was saying. So you were one of the people who didn't agree with everything that I said. And I thought it would be really, really good to have you bring your perspective, because I know that, there's lived experience. There's also helping women, working with women, what works and what doesn't work. So I thought we could have a chat today about really the topic of, I guess, expectations, standards, boundaries when it comes to particular after a divorce or whatever. So tell me what you was in my presentation about, sisters talking to them about kind of being realistic when it comes to remarrying. Go ahead. Come on, give it to me, girl.
It was a while back, but I remember you were discussing about not having expectations that this is going to be a replaceable father, that this person coming in is not going to be, because many women have that expectation that the man that they're going to remarry after they've gone through a divorce is pretty much, I'm looking for someone that's responsible. The word responsible always comes up. And, they're basically, for many women, they're looking for someone that is a surrogate or replacement father. And the thing is, there were parts of that I completely agreed with, and there was parts of that I questioned. And I think the part that I got was that it's almost like as a single mother, because of the connotations or the kind of negative perception of us as when I was a single mother, because I had that short experience between my two marriages and working with a lot of single mothers, there's definitely this kind of cultural conditioning that you have to take the second best, or you have to have less than. And so but in saying that, you also, a lot of women have these expectations that, they have their list and they have the things that obviously they want someone that's going to be treating their children well. They want their children to be looked after well, and they don't want any harm to happen to their children. And I think this is where it gets grey, because and this is where I think this discussion is going to be about, some of it anyway, is the fact that our expectations are very much projections of what we think and feel. And so coming into that, I think my reply, one of my comments was, when we position a single mother as someone that is used goods, or, you know, she has to have lower expectations than, say, someone that is freshly married, freshly young virgin. There's very much this, you know, comparison, and people use hadiths, the Quran, and etc. And so I think this is the argument area, because it's like, yes, the hadith says go for a woman that is virgin and young, right? But it also, the Prophet Muhammad SAW married women that were divorced. And so, and there's also very much in the Sahaba's time, women that were divorced were quite quick in remarriage. That was they weren't seen as something that was, they weren't seen as secondhand or something like that. Now we live in societies and times, even some cultures, where someone divorces, that's it. They don't even think about remarriage. And there's definitely this messages that are sent to single mothers that, you know, you should be focusing on your children. You shouldn't be getting remarried. There's a lot of messages that are sent. Now there's almost like expectation wise that you're meant to marry someone that may not, what's the word? It's like the word for
tick all the boxes, maybe.
Yeah, maybe tick all the boxes, that you both, there's a word for it, where you're both compatible, basically. There might be some things that you will have to lower your compatibility or expectations around. And I remember from my own personal experience when I was a single mother, I remember Sheikh Dawood Butt. He's a Canadian Pakistani Sheikh. He came to my hometown. He gave a 3-day talk on the women around the Prophet Muhammad SAW. So he talked about the qualities of the women about the Prophet. He talked about the marriages, the divorces, all these things. And one of the things he said in his work of many years working with couples and doing lectures and stuff, he said, single mothers, lower your expectations. Because I'm telling you now, not because your dean tells you that, but because the society we live in, it's more difficult to get remarried. The thing it's really interesting about that. I remember it was the first time I kind of was consciously aware. I was a single mom. I had 4 boys, and I was like, oh, so I'm supposed to lower my expectations. And I was like, okay, where do I sit with this? Because obviously I'd come from a marriage where there were certain things when you come out of that first marriage, for those of us who have divorced and come out, there's certain things you like, I don't want that. And there's some things I do want. Like, you become more clear, I suppose. You have the clarity and you see what's dysfunctional and you see what is more clear. Now, also, I have a background in like child psychology and child development. So attachment theory and secure attachment and dysfunctional attachments and what is healthy, what's not, is very, very, very clear in my head. So from a theoretical part of view, that was also there. And the thing is that I quickly picked up was, it's almost like, you've got to either, I suppose what I realized very quickly on was that if you want to remarry, it's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy. And so I went the easy avenue, I would say, by making a lot of dua. I was like, Allah, I don't have time to look for some guy.
I'm
just going to make a lot of dua. I'm doing my
tahajjud. Take care of it. Khalas.
Yeah, I was seriously, my tawakkul. And I even talked to my husband afterwards. He's like, wow, your tawakkul was like here. I said, yeah. I was like, Allah, send me the right, it's almost like that image of the horse, maybe a naive image of the horse on the shining armor guy coming and, saving you type thing. But
that's what everyone wants. Yeah.
Exactly. But honestly, it was tahajjud dua. I just hit that dua and said, Allah, send me someone that's going to be good to me, good to my children, and helps me to get to Jannah. I kept it simple. And I think that honestly was a big key. I didn't have the big list.
Yeah, that makes a huge difference. That makes a huge, huge difference. And I want to just jump in on that because we're talking about expectations, right?
Yeah.
And just even the idea of lowering expectations or standards, it just feels right. You listen, you see immediately there's resistance, right?
Yeah.
And so there's one thing I wanted to offer on that is for anybody who is feeling that resistance and that ickiness, I think the important thing is to clarify for yourself, where are my expectations right now?
Yeah.
Right? Because if, for example, like where you were, all you wanted was someone who would be good to you and help you to Jannah.
Yeah.
That's huge. That's actually the biggest thing.
Yeah.
But most people have higher expectations than that, in the sense that they have more of a checklist. Like you said, a longer list. It's not enough for him just to be nice to you and help you to Jannah. No, he needs to look like, sound like, smell like, not be this, not do that, not like this, not like that, like to do this, not like to do that.
Yeah.
There's what you said is everything, right? But it's so much easier to achieve than what everyone else is typically looking at, right? Which is all these other external lifestyle, things on our wish, right? So I think looking at where your expectations are right now in terms of, what is it that you're actually asking for, and how much are you asking for? And then we'll get, hopefully we'll get to the point where we talk about sort of, what we are bringing and what we're hoping to give in return for that. But we can address that later. But I think, what you said about having that mindset of, look, this is what I really need. Ya Rab, give it to me in whatever form it comes in. I think that's hugely liberating. What do you think of that?
It was very empowering, because at that time I felt very lost and very scared, and so it was like tawakkul. I have to hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakeel. Allah is sufficient for me. Send the right person that was meant for me. And I didn't have the time. I didn't have the time to sit on dating sites and I didn't want to. Right? I didn't want to do that. And I see the disaster of that in so many ways. And I know some people, I suppose you've done this work for so long, and it just wasn't in my fitra, I suppose, to just put myself out there. It was almost like, Allah, you can make it happen. And I just want to do this. And the thing was, it wasn't to the most ultimate goal. For me, it was, I need to raise these boys in a home where there isn't a dysfunctional abuse. That was important for me. So for me, that was dua was the key. Dua was the key. And the biggest thing I thought, look, if I'm going to change anything, I remember that hadith that says two things that came out for me was that Allah will replace with better when you turn to him, when you seek his help. And the second one was, Allah will not change the condition of a person until they choose to make that change. That self-awareness was like, that's it. This is my self-awareness journey. If the man comes along the way, alhamdulillah, but this is my self-healing and self-awareness journey. And I think that was so important, because we attract the same thing to ourselves if we don't heal and work through those things that will come up for ourselves, those wounds, those low self-esteem, low self-confidence, holding on to past traumas. We have to work through and look at what's getting in our way. And you talked about resistance, Na'ima. When I see expectations now, years later, when I see it now, I see a lot of our expectations are poisonous. I see a lot of our expectations are based on comparison. They're not truly what we want deep down. They're what society has told us that we're supposed to have in a man, right? And some of us don't even know what is a true. How can you ask of a man when you don't even know yourself? And this is the thing. It reminds me of Sufyan ibn Thawri. He says a saying where he says that, Radiallahu anhu, if you know yourself, you'll never be affected by what people say of you. So this is the key. The more you build your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the more you build your understanding of who you are, you're going to get clearer about who is it that you inshallah hope to marry. But you also don't get fixated. I didn't look at looks. Actually, and I always say this, when I first met my husband, I was like, it's really funny. When I first met my husband, I was like, oh, he's not that good looking. And I say that to him. It's like, and mashallah, now to me, he's so good looking, because remember, it's character that builds a person, right? And mashallah, he's good looking, but he wasn't the type, right?
Yeah.
That I've always been, But now, mashallah, it's just, and the same with him. When he saw me, it wasn't like, he wasn't sure of the picture. And then, so you when you fixate, say you fixate in wealth, next day the person could get corrupt. So a person could lose all their work. They could bankrupt. So these are tangible things. These are things that can change. The conditions can change. But the one thing that you look for is the condition of the heart. Now, you don't really know the condition of the heart, but you can look at the actions that, actions show a lot of what the words and actions the person show. So there's two values I looked at. I think values are really important. Narrowing down what the values, I was very clear, two values, trustworthiness and honesty. If he has that, bismillah. Bismillah. And it reminded me of that. I remember when he came and he proposed and that Mum said to me, Khadijah, that you rushing into it, he's the first one, like just wait a little. And I said, Mum, he meets the criteria. He's honest, he's trustworthy. This is what I've picked up so far. And I feel I did my istihara and I feel this is right. My intuition, my inner wisdom told me, Bismillah, go. What most people do, they're stuck here in their thinking. They're stuck here on the expectations. It's like, oh, but he doesn't have this and he doesn't have that. They don't follow their intuitive intuition that Allah has put that wisdom in your heart that tells you, yeah, there's something, this can work. This is, and remembering what the purpose of why we get remarried, it protects us. It protects us from so many things. And the thing that got to me was there are so many people working so hard on the tangible or the outer appearance, or they're working so hard on all this that is temporary and can change. But this is what you got to be working on. This is the thing. If you work on your purification of your heart, you really connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and start to know yourself, then you're going to know people better. You're going to understand them better. The other thing came up for me, Na'ima, I teach red flags, green flags, dysfunctional relationships, secure relationships. So many women look for the red flags. They actually don't look for they're so mirrored by the red flags.
Yeah.
They're not seeing the green flags.
We never talk about green flags. Even when you said green flags just now, I was like, what? Is that even a thing? What's a green flag? And then of course, obviously that is what a green flag is. Okay, tell us a little bit about that then.
So green flags are the things that tell you in a relationship that it's going to probably be a secure relationship. So things like emotional safety. So when I talk to him, he doesn't put me down. Or if I talk to her, she's not making snarky comments. Like a green flag is asking for repair. So if there's a rupture or they're not communicating, a beautiful green flag is that you can have a difference of opinion and completely respect each other. So many people will get very offended by the difference of an opinion. And it is huge. That shows a level of maturity. That shows a level of emotional understanding. And trustworthiness is a basic green flag. You feel secure with them because you've picked up that vibe, that intuitive vibe. And remembering, our souls are energy. So many people will shut off that and not actually connect. What I find a lot of sisters, and it's really interesting, if you have an anxious attachment, you will then find the person that's good for you sometimes a bit boring. Because they're not,
Whoa, okay, wait, hold up, wait. Because this thing, and we've talked about this before, thing of needing to kind of have the zing zing and have the zhuzh, and he needs to have swag, and he needs to, really be that exciting, that, So what's all this about boring and attachment? Please tell us more about that.
So usually our attachment styles are born in that first 7 years of life, and they have
tell us about that. Actually break that down for us in case anyone's listening and they're not familiar with the attachment styles. Let's have a listen.
So basically in that first 7 years of life, you built a bond with your caregivers, the people that most reliable caregivers that were in your care, usually your mother and father, if that was how your family looked like. To have a secure attachment, you had to have aspects of that your needs were met. You felt a sense of belonging. You felt love. You felt that actual aspect of love. Some people were loved, but they didn't feel it. A feeling of that I was seen and heard. Usually it's reliable caregiving. Basically, a child grew up knowing that there was some safety in the world. They knew that their needs will be met. And they could actually, this is a really important skill, because then as adults, they can actually directly say what their needs are. Many adults have issues with articulating what their needs are because as a child, they may have had those needs shut down or they weren't met. And so when we look at children that weren't brought up in a secure attachment, so they may have this different types of avoidance, anxious attachment. So if a child was brought up in more of an anxious attachment, then they would feel fearful about their needs being met, or they would feel extra clingy, right? They feel like they need to attach. They activate more. They feel it's almost like they become hypervigilant around relationships. So they can be suffocating in some ways in their relationship. There's
a sensitivity there.
Yeah.
Is it from fear? Are they operating from fear when they're like worried that, oh, he hasn't called back or he hasn't texted, that means that, you know, is that what it looks like?
So anxious attachment usually want more reassurance in their relationship. So they will have a strong desire for closeness and strong desire to maintain that closeness. So yeah, they can become extra controlling or insecure sometimes in those relationships. Then when you deal with someone who's insecure, avoidance attachment, they want that emotional distance. They don't want to get too close. They've been brought up, maybe they weren't allowed to have, you know, as much affection or connection, or it was shut down. Their parent may not have kept an emotional distance, and so they don't like to feel needed. They will they feel discomfort with too much emotional connection. So not understanding, this is really big thing, or they might be highly sensitive to rejection. So based on our attachment styles, which change as we, and they, mashallah, they can become very secure in safe relationships as adults. They come as, and these can become secure. But what happens is, before you're even meeting someone, you're operating from your attachment style, a lot of what your child attachment style was. And so if you're not consciously aware that you may have, and that's why I work with a lot of women lately, especially, I've been working with a lot of single women looking for a man, because they jump in. So example, if they're anxious attachment, I had one sister, she's anxious attachment. She'll straight away jump and she'll try and talk to him and just hold on to him and scared that he's going to abandon her or reject her. And so that doesn't give you a place where you can really just follow your wisdom and really check in and do the istihara and get your guardians to check in, because it's like, no, I've got to hold on to him. But this also relates to deeper feelings of unworthiness and needing someone to kind of prop me up. So this very deep area, Na'ima. And so example characteristic of avoidance attachment, if they have unmet needs as a child, then they might project that in their adult relationships. So, oh, she's not meeting my needs. So projections a big one, assumptions, things like that. If you're not consciously aware of this, it's not just two people coming together and, okay, let's get to know each other. Your own projections, assumptions, beliefs, sensitivities to rejection or abandonment, or what you perceive as a rejection or abandonment, that's all going to impact. And so when that kind of lush, kind of that what you talked about, it's that real feel, a lot of that it can be more of a, how do you say it? That can also be, it may be signs where the person is being extra hyper vigilant to connect, but they're scared. They're coming from fear. They're scared of being rejected. So they come in really quickly, or they attach too quickly, or they may ghost. Ghosting is a big one in you know, like they just avoidance. I don't want to deal with this. She's getting too close to me, or he's getting too close to me. I'll just take a step back. All this impacts our relationships. And so when people come in, and then you add in expectations, then you add in children, you add in all these aspects, right? So what I'm saying is, before you even think about, whether you're male or female, before you even think about remarriage, you've got to know your stuff. You've got to know what's going on for you, which could have, especially of those of us who went through our first marriage and it broke down, which will naturally create an abandonment or rejection wound sometimes, is actually knowing who am I? And pausing to actually know that. And I don't give a time frame for that. I think it's something that people can do a lot of expansive, impactful work on themselves in a short period of time by really becoming aware of themselves. But I do think a big issue, and that's why so many marriages are affected, is we don't know ourselves enough.
Yeah. No, there's a lot there, subhanAllah. And, you know, as you were talking, something popped into my head, which I've seen. Sometimes I watch trashy reality TV shows, right? Where they kind of marry at first sight and all this kind of thing. And something that struck me about, you know, when we're having communication with somebody, this issue of trauma bonding, right?
Yeah.
Where, you know, it's almost like you have a need, right? You have a need based on a trauma that is unprocessed, that is unhealed. And, you know, when a man, especially a man, has a similar trauma or has been through something similar and is able to tell you about it, it's almost like, oh my God, he's in touch with his feelings. He's being vulnerable with me. Like, I feel safe with him. And now the two of you kind of you either are kind of making a bid for that kind of connection, or there is that kind of connection. Is that something that you've seen before? Is that something to be concerned about in the talking stages?
Definitely this emotional enmeshment, which also happens already with lots of adults did this with their parents. So this was the emotional enmeshment where the parent was very codependent on the child to make them feel better. I'm okay, you're okay. So there is that, a lot of that comes in then into adult relationships where it's almost like, oh, he's got red lights like me. I feel safe with him. But it's actually, it could be the same old feeling of something that's actually dysfunctional. That's actually something that's not healthy. But it's so intense, and it seems so connected. But in actual fact, it's coming from two people that are quite wounded. Wow. Sometimes, and haven't worked through those wounds. And that enmeshment just seems normal. And it seems normal and you see women, they'll say like, oh, 6 months into the marriage, I wasn't the same person anymore. Like I've lost myself, or I see men, I've seen my situation. The brother was such a lovely person, and the sister, and so loving to his mother and sisters. But when he got married, she was so jealous. So she pulled him away. And he's like, it just became he mirrored her. He became more negative like her. He just literally mirrored her emotional state and how she thought and how she thinks. And he totally withdrew himself from his mother and his siblings, his sisters. So definitely, I think that I honestly feel like one of the biggest issues is not actually our marriages. It's the dysfunctional parenting of us as a child, for many of us that then grow up as adults. And this is the intergenerational trauma that's passed on. And I was just coaching 2 hours just before, and we're talking about, some of the sisters were talking about that the husbands are not on the same page. And we're talking about raising our boys differently, like raising them, because one of them, we were talking about how the message, most of their husbands don't cry, and their husbands send the message to their children that you're not allowed to cry, especially to their boys. Very common. And I was saying, we're talking about how the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was a very emotionally intelligent man. Crying was a normal aspect. Having emotions was a normal aspect. Umar radiallahu anhu was known for his profuse self-islah of crying. When he was really having that self-rectification, checking in with himself. Busy man, but he checked in with himself. He took the time to unplug, really checked in with himself. And I think this is such a key aspect of marriages, whether you are in your first marriage, second marriage, or third marriage, is really checking in with yourself. The more you understand yourself, the less you're going to project, the less you're going to have these expectations that are really unrealistic, some of them. They really are. So example, going back to our discussion about this point, I do believe the father has his role. And yes, some fathers are not in the best state as a role model, but I don't think that anyone can replace still the father, just like no one can ever replace the mother. And I was a stepmother. I went through a stage where I was a stepmother. I was a stepmother in my first marriage, for a good 10, 12 years. And then now my children have a stepfather. So I'm on that place where I've watched being a stepmother, and I've watched what it is to be a unstepfather. And there's one thing me and my husband always say. It's a very, I wouldn't say unpaid job, but it's definitely a place where you, as a step parent, whether you're a stepfather or stepmother, it's you don't get the credit that I suppose you expect or want, right? It's not an easy. Yeah. Anyone who's a step parent, mashallah, you know what I'm talking about beyond what I'm saying. And I think sometimes the other party doesn't always appreciate that. Now, I came into a marriage very aware of that. I could see that. And that was one of the things that worked. 6 years down the track, the boys have a good connected relationship with their stepfather, because I knew, okay, I have to, this is a very delicate situation. This is a very delicate way, and everyone will deal with it differently. But I knew that I had to give him the position of Amir, but also be understanding of the dynamic here, because this is strangers coming all together.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I think the key aspect, go on, Na'ima.
No, please continue. I'll say when
I was just going to say that I really truly believe, other than really consciously getting to know yourself, being aware of your flaws, being aware of your own perceptions and attitudes that also can come in from old baggage that can come into that marriage, is really being sensitive to everybody's needs. But one of the biggest things that's so important is taqwa. You don't have taqwa, it's not going to work. I'm so sure of that. You have to have taqwa. You have to have those hard conversations. You have to have, okay, what would Allah want from me? How do I show up with ihsan? Like, this is hard. This is not my kid, and I have to show up with ihsan with this child. That takes a man to do that, or that takes a real woman to do that. And so you have to know before, and this is one thing that's a good advice my husband once told me, because they got to know before if they're cut out to do it. If they don't know themselves and they don't think they're cut out to do it, then they shouldn't enter into that relationship.
100%. 100%. I agree. And you know, just finishing up on the point about expectations. You know, you were talking about, you know, doing the work on yourself and, you know, being self-aware, really being honest about yourself and, you know, having taqwa, you know, kind of knowing how to show up or what you need to do to show up. These things that we're discussing now, I'm of the opinion that these should be standard, right? And I think, I remember I was having a conversation with somebody and we were talking about, you know, what people deserve and what they expect and all of this kind of thing. And the person was saying, look, no one deserves anything, right? You don't deserve anything, right? If Allah gives you something, alhamdulillah. If he doesn't give it to you, yani alhamdulillah la kulli hal, right? But you can't say because I'm X, Y, Z, I deserve X, you know, A, B, C, D. Yeah. But I think I want to kind of try to nail this. And I think what I would like us as women to remember is that there's a difference, as you said, between the inner and the outer. There is a difference between character and values and principles and all the externals. And I think that if we concentrated more on ensuring that we first and foremost, that we have what is needed on the inside, and then we look for somebody who has what we need them to have on the inside, and pay less attention to the external, to the material, to the commercial, to the image, you know, to, like you said, the society or the community-based, you know, wish list. I think that's when I say, you know, everyone should have realistic expectations, not just single moms, not just divorcees, everyone needs to have a lot more realistic expectations. And when it comes to, when I said, you know, like, you know, lowering your standard, of course, nobody wants to hear that. It's because our expectations and our standards are hyper unrealistic right now, where we not only want the full package on the inside, but we want the so-called full package on the outside. And that's not life. That's not realistic. And if we were to look at the Sahaba, for example, right, we know that the Sahaba, radiallahu anhum, you know, they were on a spectrum of personality traits, of characters, of wealth, of ability, you know, of strength, you know, so many different variations between them, right? You had the ones who were extremely jealous, the ones who were, you know, very supportive, the ones who were very soft with their wives, the ones who were very strict. You have a huge plethora, right, of characters and personalities. So in a way, we've built an archetype of the ideal Muslim husband that doesn't exist. It doesn't exist because, for example, the Prophet ﷺ, a lot of people say, oh, would you be married to the Prophet ﷺ? Well, of course I would marry the Prophet ﷺ. He's the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, sis, does that mean that you'd be happy to go to sleep having drunk water and eaten some dates? You know, would you be cool with that? Would you be cool with not being able to have the luxuries that other people from that time had? Right? Would you be cool with being one of 9 or 13? Would you be cool with your husband going out to fight in battles and leaving you at home with the children? It's an ideal that is not based in reality. The reality is, I think, for all of us as human beings and as Muslims especially, I love what you said, Khadija, when you said about how your criteria was so simple and succinct, but it was actually everything that actually matters. Is he going to treat you well? and he's going to help you get to Jannah. And I think if more of us embraced that and literally shed all the other baggage, or most of the other stuff, because most of the other stuff, it only matters because we make it matter. We make it important in our heads. I don't know. Am I like, delusional here? What do you think?
No, Na'ima, I think what you're saying is that we're the ones that assign meaning, or we give meaning or power to things. We make things look a certain way. There was something about what you said. I think that I had the words I would put it is that this whole idea about being an empowered woman means that I have so many choices. And the thing is, I can be an empowered woman, but I don't have a lot of choices as a single mother. And this is the fact.
Yeah.
This is the fact. And it's not to hurt anyone, but it's like, and yes, I was self-aware and I held my value and I said, no, I'm worthy. And I knew myself and I knew the criteria and that, and everything's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's permission and will. But I was humble enough to know that, I wasn't in the forefront, alhamdulillah, but I was humble enough to know that I don't think, and we know statistically second and third marriages, percentage-wise, is even far less than what our first marriages are. And I talk to a lot of single women, single mothers, and they always say, some of them say, if that marriage wasn't abusive, I would have stayed just for the kids to have that intact. So what I'm saying is that if you're not in an abusive marriage and you're thinking of exiting, and I see this a lot because there is this idea, and I know people don't like to talk about it, but there is this idea that the grass is green on the other side. The grass is greener where you water it. And I'm not
this idea that there's a whole like a lovely candy factory full of amazing brothers out there, right?
Exactly.
That just waiting for you to come and just choose your particular variety.
Yes.
Yeah. Speak to it, sis. Speak to it.
I want to just say, this is the other thing too. It's almost like I'm finding this responsible man that's going to take my children. Do you understand how the dynamics of remarriage is? Like financially, like if that father is not supporting those children, man, you're left to then deal with that financial responsibility yourself. And he's only going to help so much because it's not his responsibility, right? It's still on you. This was something that was a big thing for me, like working this out, having to work to support my children's financial needs and that, because those needs were not being met, because let's face it, many of us, the father disappears. And so the second thing is this idea that and I'm seeing good stepfathers. I have seen it with my own eyes, but end of the day, it's still not their father. And they can be as great to their stepchildren, and they can show up with their stepchildren, they can love their stepchildren, but they're still not their father. And I'm not saying this, like I'm married to a stepfather. My brother's a stepfather. I know a lot of stepfathers. It's just children attach, mashallah. They can build a very secure attachment to someone that isn't their biological parent. I'm definitely valuing that. Yeah. But I'm saying if you come into a marriage kind of thinking that this person is going to father your children a certain way, they may not father your children the way you want it or the way that they used to. So kids have to go through a whole transition in itself as well. And I know most people don't walk out of a marriage wanting to walk out of marriage, but we definitely, in the empowerment women world where you have so many choices, this can impact your thinking. And I'm seeing an increase in divorce thinking, where, when things are getting challenging, or things are getting rough, or things are hard, let's have some divorce thinking, and that may be the solution. But the divorce thinking is influenced by the input that you're putting into your mind that is affecting us and our families, the security of our families. Don't think that families and the secure nuclear thriving family is something that is the agenda in the world right now. That is not what they want.
No, it's
and so
not,
as an ummah, our ummah is made up of families. And so this is something to tread. I had some sisters that said to me, oh, I just outgrew him. I get that.
Oh, no. Ooh, that one there. That is,
we're not going there.
A trigger. Oh my God. That is just, yeah. I'm not going to, just, you speak.
Okay.
Sis.
We're just,
you speak. I'm going to keep quiet.
And it's like, okay, you outgrew him. I get it. We are intellectual beings. But it's like you came into a contract of marriage with these children These children haven't outgrown him. And so it is a big, big change. It takes a big step. Now, I'm not saying don't go through divorce if there is legitimate reasons for it, but I'm saying tread very carefully. Don't get stuck in that divorce thinking of I have a lot of choice and it's going to be like this and it's going to be the better, when a lot of the time, so many women I know regret or wish they had done more, or are really in a difficult situation, the co-parenting situation where he's remarried or she's remarried and they've moved on. It's the children that many of them feel like they are basketballs between two homes, or they feel very disconnected, or they have a mean, step parent, or their mother or father's preoccupied, emotionally drained. And I suppose it comes back to if the first marriage is built properly, if you don't have a strong legitimate reason, really pause and check in that some of that thinking that you're having may not be supportive to you and your children, even though it may perceive to be that way in that moment. So I just feel like we're moving to a place that is a bit scary, because we're not putting our I'm saying our children, mashallah, can thrive in a second marriage. They can thrive with a step parent. They can, mashallah, they can move, but there is a big transition, and that transition can be traumatic. And so really checking in with yourself, getting to know yourself, and those expectations sometimes that you might have in that marriage where you're exiting out, or you want that divorce thinking, and it's not based on abuse. It's just based on basically I've outgrown him. Really check in, what's the expectations you're having of him, because no one is meant to give us our happiness, or no one's meant to give us our joy. We're meant to create that within ourselves. It's two people, connect in that way. So I don't know if I'm relaying what I'm trying to say here, but I have this fear, I suppose. There's this fear coming up that so many women exit, and a few years down the track, and they're starting to, the reality hits. And when you get told, I have sisters get told, oh, I do want to marry me because I have kids. And the thing is, this is what we're dealing with too. Men have also been given this kind of negative connotation around remarrying as a single woman. My husband, when he first proposed and he went to the first sheikh he went to, and he said, look, can you organize my nikah? He's like, no, don't marry. Why are you marrying a single mother? He pretty much tried to talk him out of it. And my husband was shocked, and he kind of came back, and he didn't tell me until a long time after. And then the second sheikh went, and alhamdulillah went fine. But there are people that have that view. It's like, no, don't put yourself into trouble. Don't make it hard for yourself, right? So it's not an easy journey, I suppose. And getting remarriage is not easy. If you don't know yourself and you're working through your inner wounds and your inner stuff, that marriage is hard. It's hard work, because you got children there, and you have his needs and his haq, and your children have haq and rights, and you have haq and rights. So it's a very fragile, vulnerable situation for everyone involved. And I suppose tread carefully, because if that person doesn't have a lot of taqwa, it's going to be even harder to reclaim what you want, because nothing ever looks exactly the same. It'll never be the same. And so everyone is different. Everyone has different perceptions, different feelings, different whatever way that they bring in. And to create that healthy win-win situation requires compromise. And compromise means letting go of some expectations.
100%. No. You've hit the nail on the head repeatedly. Subhanallah. So as you're talking, I feel like I'm feeling what you're saying, because really, as you said, there's a divorce thinking. And subhanallah, as I've said before, I've been guilty of this, right? Of, asking for a divorce and then celebrating the fact that I'm free. I people know I've mentioned this on my channel. I deleted I took the stuff down from the internet after I came to the stage where I was like, hold on a minute. That moment of euphoria that maybe many women feel, right, after they are set free, even if it wasn't abusive, or anything. Like, there's a moment of kind of euphoria afterwards where I'm free of him, alhamdulillah, I'm free of him, because at the end of the day, dealing with human beings is tough. Let's just call it what it is,
It's a lot of relief.
If all it is, exactly, even if all it is that he likes his eggs sunny side up, right? You don't have to worry about that anymore. You don't have to worry about how he likes his eggs, how he likes his laundry, about him coming home at this time, the kids go to sleep anytime. You don't have to deal with the headache of him and his mom. And all, so that's what you're thinking, right? You're free. But that freedom, it comes at a price. And not only do you pay the price, but as you said, your children pay the price. He pays the price. Often your family pays the price. His family pays the price. It's not just, you being free. Like you said, the children hadn't outgrown him. The grandparents probably hadn't outgrown either their grandchildren or even you, or even your parents, because my father, he mourned the loss of his son-in-law. Like that was hard for him because he had built a relationship. And I'm not even going to talk about my children, because that's something that is damage that I cannot undo, and I cannot take it back, and I can't go through that for them. So really, when sisters, I'm hoping that inshallah you're listening to this. And if you are in a space, as you're saying, Khadija, where you're just in your head, you're fantasizing about being single, you're fantasizing about divorce, you're fantasizing about life after him, stop doing that, because it's not real. Firstly, it's just an imagined future, and you are investing emotion in the wrong place. Like you said, you're thinking about the grass that's greener, that's on the other side of this separation, of this divorce and whatever. It doesn't exist. It's not real. There's nothing guaranteed about that future. All you know is what you have right now. And if all your emotional energy and your hopes and your dreams are invested in an imagined future when you finally left this guy, and may I just say, left him so that either you've kicked him out of the house and now he has to either go back to his parents' house or find some flat or room to rent somewhere and live on his own again after 10 years of being with his children and his wife every day. Which, we never think about that side, you know what I mean? Like, of these guys who are just the ones that
and then even restrict him from having access to his children.
That whole scenario. Exactly. So exactly, it's true. SubhanAllah, let's call it what it is. So you're investing all that emotional energy in this imagined future after you've gotten rid of this guy, instead of investing it in what you have right now, which is a commitment and a family and a job to do. And you need to get your head in this game, not that game. Because that game doesn't exist. When I've seen sisters online nowadays, it's so funny, isn't it? The pendulum. I think Talha mentioned this in one of our marriage conversations, where she said, like, at one point, divorce was, as you say, the dirty word, right? You would never, ever ask for a divorce. And if you did, you were a complete pariah. You'd never get remarried. It was extreme. Nothing like the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Now we're in a space where getting divorced or being a divorcee is almost like a badge of honor. And it's something that is like, it's no big deal. And we're asking for people to destigmatize it and just accept a divorcee is no different to an unmarried. And I'm sorry, it may make you feel nice to say that, but it's not true. It's just not true. Yes, you have been through, and it's the same with a man. A man who's been married and divorced is different from a man who's never been married. It's some good things and some bad things, right? But the reality is that if you've been through a particular situation, you are not the same as somebody who hasn't been through that situation. Exactly. And this thing, and again, sisters are doing, I guess, what women in general in society are doing, where they're conflating their self-worth and their value as a human being with their value as a wife. Two are not the same, right?
Yes. Yeah. Some people stay in that relationship. It's like, well, at least I'm still a wife. It's that part. If you can legitimately walk out of a marriage knowing in your heart you did everything possible to keep this marriage intact, and you have very good illegitimate reason in your intuition, your heart, you can walk away, then that's the possibility, whether it's based on abuse or whatever that legitimate reason is. But if you all know into your intuition, there won't be any guilt. You know, of course, if there's a trauma bonding, you may feel guilty leaving that person. But in general, marriage is sacrifice. in any marriage, there is a levels of sacrifice involved. It's never the peachy couple that looks so beautiful and cute on, out there on the image.
On the gram.
They're arguing. They are, if anything, they probably have more anxiety and stress because they need to do more selfies. But it's like more videos together, whatever. So it's like the real reality is every marriage has sacrifices. Every marriage goes through pains. I can definitely tell you that as someone that's remarried, the first 2 years was like really difficult. It was very, very difficult. And I can definitely tell you the worst experience ever in my whole life is the moment I had to sit down with two of my sons and say, your father and your mother are not living together ever again. And I remember that moment broke me. Like the reaction of two of my sons at that time, the reality was getting clearer over that time. But to sit and actually tell your child, that was probably the worst moment in my whole life. To be able to say, that's it. It's not, because that's their picture. Their world is destroyed. That reality is taken away from them. And so we have to be hyper vigilant. We have to check into our thinking. A lot of the thoughts that we're having is from the information that we're absorbing, but is that information really supporting you?
Is it helpful?
Definitely, yeah. And we see the gimmick, we see the making fun of the woman in the kitchen making biryani, and we see these things that like kind of the traditional methods of being a wife or mother is looked down upon. But the traditional aspects of being a wife or mother are the things that actually, if you believe it or not, bring joy. They're sitting and having a cup of tea with your husband, or those little things that bring joy. May Allah protect all our marriages and help us in this time where there's so much envy and so much comparison and so much, there's evil, is that just those little things make up the marriage. They're the things that are, and if that's been lost, check in with yourself and see what can you do to reunite that, to water your own green grass before you think of an exit plan. And I'm saying this in general. I'm not talking to women who are going through constant abuse. I completely understand and validate that you will need to exit eventually. And may Allah protect you and help you out, man and female, but obviously female more. But I suppose being more aware of where, with taqwa and ihsan, asking Allah, what would Allah want from me in this situation? Really going intuitively, checking in with your inner wisdom and seeking Allah's help and support, because Allah says He's sufficient for you. He's sufficient for you. He's sufficient for you. So there's certain narratives that you may be absorbing that you're not even aware that are hurting your marriage or hurting your image as a single mother, or hurting the beliefs that you're holding on to. There's narratives and beliefs that we're absorbing that we're not even consciously aware of.
Well, hey, mashallah. I think you've given us so much food for thought, Khadija. Thanks so much. Jazakallah. Like I said, you hit the nail on the head, like repeatedly. But seriously, may Allah guide us. May Allah protect us. May Allah allow us to build, solid, connected homes for our children, for the next generation to come out of, inshallah. But before we wrap up, how can people find you online?
You can see me on Instagram, Khadijah al-Kaddour. All things thriving family, thriving relationships, and us Muslims thriving within ourselves, standing up, empowered together, inshallah, in a way that is pleasing to Allah, inshallah. So you can find me on Facebook, or you can find me on Instagram as under Khadijah al-Kaddour, inshallah. And please, anything I've said wrong is still from my own perception. It's from my own thinking, and I may not have said something that is pleasing to Allah. May Allah protect me from saying anything that isn't pleasing to Him. But I hope that you understand the message, that this is deep. This is deeper than we think. And so we have to tread more carefully, because we're accountable on the Day of Judgment. It's amanat. Our children are amanat. The person that we're married to, their heart is an amanat as well. So be careful how you're interacting with that person, because Allah forbids oppression. He forbids any kind of, He forbids oppression even on yourself. So really think about, and expectations can be oppressive. Remember that too. Expectations can also be oppressive because you're projecting something that may not be maybe an illusion. It may not be helpful or supportive. So really checking in with yourself, whatever decision that you decide to do, inshallah.
I love it.
Na'ima.
Jazakallah khairan, Sister Khadija. Thank you so much. And for those of you who are watching, thank you so much for rocking with us. Jazakumullah khairan. I hope that you got something out of the content. So leave your comments below. Make sure that you smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. And inshallah, we will see you again on the next episode of The Marriage Conversation. Until then, wassalam.